ठीक है मतलब उधर से साफ कर करना क्या
और पीजी में कोई प्रोजेक्ट नहीं है जैसे वो इंटरनल है
नहीं होगा इंटरनल नहीं
इंटरनल भी नहीं है वो क्वेश्चन मार रहे थे उसमें भी
सब बस वही की बात है
अभी तरुष बोला प्रैक्टिस कर रहा था उसके वाले दिन
होगा तो करता है
पेज देना चाहिए लेकिन शायद कम मार्क्स आते हैं
इसको
थ्योरी बहुत है ना
हाँ बहुत ज्यादा ऐसा नहीं अबे एक ही थ्री आएगा पूरे 4 साल में जो मतलब पिछले पिछले साल आया था वो तो पिछले साल भी आया बस एक क्वेश्चन होते हैं बस एक और ये हर साल होता है
कंप्यूटर में ऐसा नहीं है ना कंप्यूटर में देख जो तेरा सेक्शन ए है उसके लिए रिवीजन क्वेश्चन का मैम भेज देते हैं सेक्शन बी 4 प्रोग्राम लिखने हैं बस जो पूरे साल में कराए उसमें से कोई भी
अरे रीड प्रेस में पफ हो जाएगा प्रिंट
इसमें
रीड प्रेस में
प्रिंट हो जाएगा
टी-शर्ट प्रिंटिंग
रीड प्रेस में टी-शर्ट प्रिंटिंग क्या होता है
चैट जीपीटी की मां को
नोट्स बनाया
सब तुमको समझ में नहीं आता
कुछ मतलब नहीं ये मेरे नोट्स थे
तो
बोला नहीं
ऐसा से करता है पागल
मैं पूरा पढ़ा के लिए एक बार रिपीट नहीं करूँ मैथ्स तो कुछ भी
हां मैंने भी ऐसा करता तो यार मैंने ऐसा लगा भाई पता नहीं क्या पढ़ा है मैंने पहले ये सब ध्यान दिया होता क्या पढ़ा मैंने
तो तो बोला था नहीं होगा तो वाला पार्ट तो वीडियो यही मेरे दिमाग में सब कुछ इलेक्ट्रोलाइसिस मेटल वीडियो सिर्फ मोर कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं हो रहा था सिर्फ मेरे मार्क्स जा रहे हैं ये मैंने आपको बोलूँगा आगे स्टार्ट कर रहा है समझ ही नहीं आ रहा भाई मोर कॉन्सेप्ट एंड सोल्यूशन ज़्यादा समझ में आ रहा है जो भी समझाते समझ में आ रहा सॉल्व करना एग्जाम के क्वेश्चन दोनों सॉल्व किए दोनों हल दिया है एक में एम्पिरिकल फॉर्मूला ढूंढना था उसमें भी गलत गया और एक सेक्शन बी का क्वेश्चन था उसमें भी गलत मैम भी तो वीडियो
तो भाई भाई मुझे देखने का भाई प्रोजेक्टर वगैरह चालू हो जाएगा
Scenarios. Let's see. We can draw something. फ्रेम कैसे दिखता है?
अच्छा अच्छा तो बना भाई आप बकवास ही।
अबे पता नहीं भाई वो बायो के प्रोजेक्ट के लिए किया था ना तो ब्रेन जितना याद आ रहा है उतना बना रहा है, ऐसा बीच में कुछ तो था फिर पता नहीं नो आइडिया यहाँ पे कुछ तो था पता नहीं सेरेबेलम था ये क्या पता नहीं याद आ रहा तभी बनाया था एक कभी बनाया था मैंने जून में बनाया रहेगा मैं वेकेशन पर टाइम पास किया
नहीं मुझे कोई डिजाइन बताओ तो मुझे टी-शर्ट है और क्या टी-शर्ट बना डिजाइन
डिजाइन
अच्छा है ना भाई
हार्ड कोर डिजाइन बनाता हूँ
अच्छा है ना समझ के लोग खरीद रहे
एक मैं देश भक्ति कर
कोई खरीदेगा नहीं भाई चल दोनों बनाते हैं इसका अच्छा खरीदते हैं
शी इधर ग्रीन सेलेक्ट करो गो इंडिया go to India go to
Go to India? What the hell?
अभी की तरह
Let's draw.
तूने किया नहीं तेरा
oh I was completing it
Let's draw neuron. Please keep my mobile there on my bench.
oh what a mobile
क्या हो क्या ये तेरा
अरे इसमें पबजी है ना भाई पबजी अरे पबजी कैसे कैसे भाई
Shut up. Shut up. Okay, neuron.
नेफ्रॉन बना सकते हैं
हाँ, nephron कितना सिंपल है रे.
न्यूरॉन नहीं यार
Neuron नहीं पसंद. Electrocuted माल. तुम लोग क्या कर रहे हो?
चल पानी की बाटली भर के लाते हैं.
कहाँ?
इसे पानी की बॉटल भर के लाते हैं.
ए तुम लोग का इंस्टा आईडी क्या है दोनों का?
क्या
इंस्टा आईडी.
मैं बहुत कम यूज करता हूँ
मुझे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं
मेरा
बता.
कोई नहीं
आई नो.
he's a busy guy you know
नहीं
मैंने गाइस एक साथ इसको सिर्फ इग्नोर करना है busy guy famous guy शाहरुख खान भी busy है
इसने मेरे को इतना कॉल किया एग्जाम में
मेरे को पता ही नहीं था भाई
मैंने मेरा फोन बंद करके रखा है
मैंने कम से कम 30-25 फोन किए भाई बता भाई
अरे ये मेरे को स्कूल में भी नहीं बोलता ना
अरे मैं भूल जाता हूँ भाई
आखिरी
पेपर में मैं एकदम मैं भूल जाता भाई चला गया अच्छा पेपर चला गया
आखिरी में मेरे को बोलता है
दो-
फोन नहीं उठा
फिर 4-5 दिन बाद रियलाइज होता भाई मैं गंदा पेपर लिख के आया भाई जैसे पेपर लेना खुश होता हूँ कि भाई पेपर चला गया अच्छी देखा मैंने
कैसे स्कूल में तो स्कूल के बारे में डिस्कस नहीं किया ये सब.
अब वही तो बोल रहा हूँ जैसे डिस्कस करने बैठता हूँ 4 मार्क पहले की 4 क्वेश्चन डिस्कस भाई यार मत पूछ रहा बहुत मजा आया हमने कोई डिस्कस नहीं करना चाहिए आगे
मैं फिजिक्स में स्वेयर किया था. मेरी जो क्लास टीचर है ना बहुत ही खड़ूस औरत है. तो मैं वो फिजिक्स की
देखो,
एक नहीं हो अच्छी है.
वैसे एक न्यूमेरिकल भी है भाई एक न्यूमेरिकल पूरे पेपर में एक न्यूमेरिकल
मेरा बस पेपर में एक करेक्ट है. बाकी सब हम के
और फिर इसमें कभी 61 है ब्रो
हाँ
61 है
नहीं
बस एक करेक्ट है
58 आया 50 में
58 है देखो एक करेक्ट करेगा अरे भाई ऐसा कौन सा पेपर है मेरे को बता
दो एक्चुअली दो मुझे बता.
साइंस में नोबेल फिजिक्स.
ये कलाकारी का प्लान ऑन यू
क्या पेड़ बनाया क्या?
अरे draw something else
ये ओ भाई साहब
I don't know
I edit it okay for you
नेफ्रॉन
I'll make you hot tea
तक गंदा ड्रॉ किया छी ऐसा लग I don't know नेफ्रॉन this geometry में yes इतना याद है देखता हूँ कितना याद है ये ज़्यादा बड़ा होगा यार मुझे नहीं ऐसा नहीं है
You are there. You are teaching today. Good. How was your exam? Nice, maybe. Score is what?
76
Good.
Not yet one, but hopefully 50, 60.
Achha. For the next exam, when? Next day start with pre-board straight away or in between one more exam?
No,
Pre-board December. Achha. So, where are these two girls? Which chapter we were doing? I think we were. Brain, I think we were. Brain.
Many on what? Why not examinations?
so good ये वाला
Both of you have the textbook? No? Both of you have? Then, sure.
How can I say?
No, this is, I think, this one's book.
कुछ नहीं करना तो सुना
Yes, finished with this. Tell me what was the last topic we completed?
We have to start
Start brain.
We finished off with medulla oblongata.
Yes, we finished with the structure of the brain and then what is this spinal cord? Okay, see. Let us start with the spinal cord. I'm sorry. Hold this. Now it's your book. I have to check the topic. Okay, now let us straight away go to the concept of spinal cord and complete this part of the chapter. This part of the chapter quite simple there. Okay, just give me an idea. What are we left with? Huh? Just tell me. We are left with sense organs.
Yes.
Endocrine.
Yes.
Reproductive.
Yes.
And population pollution. No?
Human evolution.
And human evolution, right? So today we'll try finishing up this part of the nervous system. We are almost done with, and then can we complete with population?
No, but for that we have to study reproductive first.
No, I'm sorry. Pollution. Not population. Pollution.
Pollution, you'll only give the markings, right?
Yeah. Pollution, nothing. So I'll just finish up with this, and then so that the next class we can start with sense organs. Okay, now look into this spinal cord. The major function of the spinal cord. So, what is important for you straight away to understand as we start with the concept of the spinal cord? Brain, you should be first of all very thorough. Now, when I talk about the subdivisions of the nervous system, what was the subdivision? This very specifically you have to remember. When I talk about the nervous system, what was the subdivision? Nervous system divided into what? CNS and peripheral nervous system. And peripheral nervous system again further classified. Peripheral nervous system again further divided into the peripheral nervous system further again divided into what? Somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. And what about autonomic nervous system further divided into sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So now that we are talking about the subdivisions, based on the subdivisions, again we go that the central nervous system we had studied consisting of what? The brain and the spinal cord. And to talk about the brain and the spinal cord, the functions, again overlapping. I'm saying what were the major functions of the brain that you had come across? Brain, the functions of the cerebrum was?
Thinking, memory, cerebral.
Only that you are not supposed to write.
Sensory
What are the functions?
perceptions.
Number one, sensory perceptions. Number two, thinking, analysis, memory.
Thinking, reasoning.
Analysis, memory, all these, intelligence, etc. Number three, voluntary functions. All the voluntary functions also. What about the cerebellum then?
Balance.
Balance.
Getting
Body
balance.
balance, muscular coordination,
Temperature.
temperature, that is hypothalamus. So when we are talking about the cerebellum, so these are the major features you remember. Now, as we start talking about spinal cord, you will come across there are quite a number of overlapping functions also. Then, as we talk about the medulla, involuntary functions. Now, talking about the medulla and the spinal cord, since the spinal cord is an extension of the medulla, so the spinal cord is also actually controlling various different type of involuntary functions. So when I talk about the spinal cord, what is the spinal cord controlling? The spinal cord is majorly controlling this particular sensory part, the sensory organ that we understand, the spinal cord. What type of functions it would generally control? It generally controls variety of involuntary functions. It generally controls a number of involuntary actions and involuntary actions in coordination with the brain. So when I say it is controlling involuntary actions, yes, it is controlling quite a number of voluntary functions also. So can we say that the spinal cord does not control voluntary actions? No, it controls. So I will put it this way, it controls voluntary and involuntary actions. It controls voluntary and involuntary actions with coordination with the brain. In coordination with the brain, it is doing this. I would understand for any type of a voluntary action, yes, it sends the signal to the brain, gets the command from the brain. Now that I talk about the process of now that I'm talking and writing, etc., we generally understand cerebrum is generally helping this, but in coordination with the spinal cord. Then again, the involuntary actions, breathing movements, if I talk about, is the brain involved in the involuntary action there? Breathing movement, yes, the medulla, and in coordination with the spinal cord. But specifically to talk about what is the spinal cord on its own specifically doing, the spinal cord is majorly controlling the reflexes. That is a major function that the spinal cord carries out, controlling reflexes. Now you have to look into this part. That, okay, first of all, try recollecting and remembering this structure, and this particular structure you should always remember. Look into figure 10.9. Look into figure 10.9. Now, if you look into that figure 10.9, this very well gives you an idea. Now, talk about the section of the spinal cord. Talk about the section of the spinal cord. So, I would understand that if I look into the section of the brain, I talk about the section of the brain. Now, in the section of the brain, what do we understand is, what would be the arrangement of the neurons in the section of the brain? The arrangement of the neuron would be how? It would be something like this, where the neurons, the nerve cells are all outward. Yes or no? The nerve cells are all outward. But if I now talk about the section of the spinal cord, I now talk about the section of the spinal cord. Now to talk about the section of the spinal cord, how it is, we generally have the gray matter arranged exactly in the shape of a H-like configuration, almost in the shape of a letter H. And how would the arrangement of the neurons would be? Now, we are going to understand the arrangement of the neurons and the basic concept of the gray and the white matter here. So how would the arrangement of the neurons be? The arrangement of the neurons would be something like this, that the cyton is somewhere here. And what about the dendrites then? The dendrites all outwards. The cyton is here and the dendrites all outwards. So now when we are talking about then the aggregation of cyton is more inwards. What is this particular region known as? This particular region is known as what? This particular region is known as what? This is known as the gray matter. What is the gray matter made up of? Cytol. The gray matter is made up of cytol. Now, why the word gray here? Because when we look into the cell body,
तनुष ने कॉल किया था ना
एक मिनट अरे आपने उठाया नीचे पता है आपको तो बोल्ड हो गया था
अरे उठा के आगे रख दिया
हाँ ना देख
वो हेलो
कैसे कर रहे
वीडियो कॉल किया वो
हेलो आई क्या हुआ आई फीलिंग आ रहा है क्या हुआ हाँ रिफ्लेक्स चेक कर रहा है
नेगेटिव में 4
अरे सच्ची में आ गए
आवाज आती है
पहले भी नहीं आया
इतना दिमाग चला नहीं किधर है
ऐसा नहीं आई वो एक ब्रांड है ना बेवकूफ.com
हाँ ये है क्लोज टू दैट
एक्चुअली मेरे मालूम नहीं था ऐसा है
मुझे पता
जैसे मेरे को दिखाया बेवकूफ.com करके
वाह
कितना
अच्छे कपड़े हैं
बहुत अच्छे कपड़े हैं और बेवकूफ से नहीं
पता
है
है दिखाया
हाँ कैसे क्या देखना समायरा का भी ग्रुप का नाम चिड़ियाघर है यू नो
इंस्टा कितना मैसेज
या इवन समायरा हैज अ ग्रुप नेम चिड़ियाघर
देखिए तरफ से इंस्टाग्राम पे क्या यूज नहीं मैंने रियलाइज
हमारा वो हाँ बट नहीं
नहीं
उन्होंने बता दिया चुपचाप
साले को आते 40-50 से
प्लीज प्लीज प्लीज
नेक्स्ट बार आते तो बच जाता
तू मैम को बोलेगा मेरे मार्क्स
पूछो ना आके पूछो
क्या बोला
36
और क्या बोलोगे इसको
फिर क्या बोली
ये नो रिएक्शन और मैंने बोला 50-60
इसका
ओके
इस मेरे में हो गया
अंदर में कोई रिएक्शन नहीं आता
बस तो पता क्या
तो हमें जल्दी नहीं हो जाना
मेरे को 70
ये पढ़ना है और ये गुलाबी पढ़ना है
74 आया फिर पेपर से क्या मेरे को बोलती है यहाँ पर एक मार्क बढ़ना चाहिए डॉक्टर 75 आया ठीक है फिर बोलती है what is this you should get above 75 what is this
75 मेरे को 50 नहीं आया था मेरी 20 पड़े रहे
बस तो पता क्या
अरे हाँ तो नंदिनी को भी
ए
शी लव
ये ना टेंशन
वो आउट ऑफ
है
सिलेबस
ग्रुप में कोई आ रहा है क्या तू आ रही तो जाना
कोई नोबडी गेस वाली नहीं है देखा आज सब है कि लोग किसी ने पूछा कर दिया कहां है
एग्जाम में देखा 17 मैसेजेस ग्रुप के अंदर है उसी के कोई आ रहा है क्या
बताती है
बस तो मैम
मैं तो नहीं ना
नाम पूछ के क्या करती है ये अंदर पढ़ा था मैं पढ़ा था ऐसे ही मैं तुम यहाँ पढ़ ये अंदर के मार्क्स होता है 38 बोली ओके ओके गुड यू 21 यू
मैम को हमारा रेंज पता है इसलिए मैम वो रेंज अगर रेंज में रहेगा तो कुछ रिएक्ट नहीं करती फिर आगे बढ़ जाती
हां वही नाम था मेरा तो याद ही था नाम तो पता है मतलब ये तो पढ़ता है नहीं रहा है
मैंने मैम को बोला
मैंने इसमें एक्चुअल पढ़ा था मतलब वैसे तो नहीं ये बाद में पता चला मैंने सब गलत ही पढ़ेगा
पढ़ रहा है आउट ऑफ सिलेबस
अबे भाई मैं इज्जत से पढ़ा ये देख मैं ये सब मेरे को बाद में पता चल रहा है भाई
तो ये स्कोप भी पढ़ा
ये सब कौन पढ़ता है भाई
डायरेक्ट इधर से पढ़ना था
और ये मैंने ये सब बर्बाद किया मैंने ये सब बर्बाद किया तो आगे
अभी देखो 10th स्टैंडर्ड के बच्चे ऐसा नहीं कि टीचर 2 मिनट बाहर गए तो हम लोग थोड़ा पढ़ ही लेते हैं तो चार क्वेश्चन एक दूसरे को पूछ ही लो ऐसा
वही
नहीं
पूछ रहे थे
हाँ you think I'm a fool standing here in front of you huh? Okay. So we were talking about the gray and the white matter. This is a very important thing that you have to remember, very specific, very simple to understand when we are talking about the arrangement of the gray and the white matter. The gray matter for the brain is outwardly arranged. White matter is inward. So the inner region of the brain looks whitish, outer region looks silverish because of the presence of a specific type of pigment in the.
What's that pigment?
The name of the pigment is the neurofibrils. When we are talking about, there's a specific other specific word also. I'm forgetting that. I am forgetting that word. Neurofilaments, neurofibrils, and wait. What was the name of this? बायो का मार्क किसको मिला?
मैंने बता दिया
इन लोगों ने बताया, तुम लोगों ने नहीं बताया।
हाँ बताया पेपर के साथ
बताया तो
इसको 74 में 75
हाँ
50s
नहीं
33
60s में आपको
नहीं
50s 40s
माशाल्लाह
उसने बोला नहीं था ना?
नहीं
उसने बोला
नहीं
पेपर दिया उसने क्लास में आके पूछ रही थी कितना नंबर उसने बोला मैंने बोला
It's a very simple word. I am forgetting now. I'll get that one. So now, when we are talking, it's not there. We'll talk about this. Neurofibrils, neurofilaments are the type of pigments, but there's a specific other type of a pigment also. Now, when we are talking about this pigment, because of that pigment, the cytone part appears grayish, silverish gray. Now, because of those silverish gray pigment, so now the gray matter and the white matter. Now, when we are talking about this outer part of the brain, what did I talk about the other day? What is this outer part of the brain known as? Cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex. So here, what to understand, I am talking about a difference between the spinal cord and the brain with reference to the gray and the white matter. Then, with reference to reflexes, now go to this concept of reflexes. As I was talking about that, complete with this diagram 10.9. For 10.9, what are some of the major concepts to understand there? Gray matter, white matter I started with. Apart from the marking of the gray and the white matter, what else now? We are talking about spinal cord. So section of the spinal cord, what are some of the parts you should know? See in that diagram, with reference to a reflex, if we study, with reference to a reflex, see there, can you see the word receptor? It's a receptor. So from there we start. It's a receptor. Receptor can be any part of the body, the skin, the eye, the ear, anything. Now this receptor, from the receptor, what type of a neuron will emerge out? It is the sensory neuron, no? The sense, follow the diagram, huh? I'm not showing you anything. The sensory neuron. So this sensory neuron from the receptor enters into the spinal cord. So it enters into the spinal cord following a particular route. Can you see? It enters the spinal cord following a particular route, and this particular pathway is known as the dorsal route. Route here means it's a path, the dorsal route. So the sensory neuron enters the spinal cord through the dorsal route. Okay. Come now look into the inner region of the spinal cord. So I talk about the inner region. So I would say the sensory neuron is entering. Now this particular regions are known as the dorsal horns. Okay. Then it enters. Now this particular neuron will send the message directly to the motor neuron. No. There will be a small neuron intermediate, and this will now, this particular neuron is there. This particular neuron is there, and this will now, when we are looking into the neuron in between the sensory and the motor, between the sensory and the motor, there will be small neurons there. Check in that figure also, there are some small neurons, and what are these neurons? These are known as the association neurons. Now these association neurons with reference to a spinal cord. Now with reference to a reflex, when we draw the figure, we'll have to always refer that it is a receptor, and from the receptor, what is entering from the receptor, the axon will generally enter. Yes or no? From the receptor, the axon part is entering because the receptor has got the cyton here. The receptor neurons will always have the cyton here. The cyton is here and it goes there. So then we are again talking about one more cell body this side, and then the dendrite, the axon here. So this is how. Then when we are talking about, this is a receptor. Follow the diagram in your book. This is a receptor. The receptor gives rise to sensory neurons. The sensory neuron will enter when the sensory neuron will enter into the gray matter. It enters into the gray matter. So I start with a receptor and then the cell body here, and then it enters into. So what type of neurons are this that we are talking about? This is the dorsal neuron, and then this neuron, if I follow and coming into, and this is an effector, and this is what we are talking about as the motor neuron. But then when we are talking about the spinal cord, the arrangement of the dorsal and the motor neuron, the sensory and the motor neuron are very close. The arrangement is not exactly same like the brain. The arrangement is a bit different. It is always something like this, that they will generally come. The arrangement would be in such a way that they always bundle up together. The arrangement is in such a way that these neurons, they always bundle up together. They always bundle up together. So close, a large number of neurons and a large number of neurons coming out. So this entire bundle of neuron that we are talking about, what is this type of a nerve now known as, where hundreds of such type of neuron entering and hundreds of such type of neuron coming out. Marking your diagram also, that is known as a spinal nerve. Spinal nerve. What type of a nerve is a spinal nerve? It is a mixed nerve. Now, with this reference, if I am talking about the reflexes, to understand the concept of reflexes, first thing that you have to understand, what are the three types of neurons? The three types of neurons, remember, one is sensory, second is motor, and third is relay or association. Correct? So this is now. But now I talk about what are the three different types of nerves. Nerves is sensory, and then motor, and then what? Mixed. Mixed. So what is the difference I'm talking about? I'm saying sensory nerve, bundle of sensory neurons. Motor nerve, bundle of motor neurons. But then what is the difference? When the motor and the sensory come together, that is how we get a mixed nerve. And then what is the association neuron or an association nerve? It is always inside the brain, inside the spinal cord. And very short, small neurons. What is their job? We will write. Carry messages from the sensory and deliver it to the motor. Only that is their function. Okay. So this is one part that is clear. Then now that we are talking about the spinal cord, I already mentioned the three functions. See there, those three functions you'll have to remember. Those three functions, page 131. What are the major functions of the spinal cord? Control the voluntary, involuntary functions. See there, conduct sensory impulses, control motor impulses. So this is there, and most important function is what? Did you get that? Three functions, 131. So this you have to remember to write. And major function, reflexes. Now, what is the definition of the word reflex? If I talk about this type of a situation that is happening, this type of a situation will just happen with reference to a stimulus. There is a stimulus. What was the definition of the word stimulus? Stimulus can be heat or touch or prick or no. Then what is the summary? What is a stimulus then? Any external factor on an agent which can elicit a response from part of your body. So there has to be generation of a response. If that is so, it is a stimulus. Then, when we are talking about responses, or if I talk about the types of reflexes, very simple. What are the type of reflexes? Number one, if I talk about reflexes majorly controlled by spinal cord. Normally, if I talk about functions controlled by like the involuntary, voluntary functions I mentioned, if this is a neuron from the spinal cord, it will send message to the brain, and the brain will give the commands back, and then the rest of the functions happen. But the moment it is a reflex, this particular pathway is cut down. If it is a reflex, this particular path, meaning the thinking process of the brain, spinal cord does not give commands to the brain and wait for its reply. Spinal cord is not sending the message to the brain and waiting for its commands. The spinal cord is immediately giving command to the effector. This is a receptor, this is an effector. The spinal cord will immediately send the message to the effector. But why like that? Because reflexes are always such type of incidents which are protective in nature. I am suddenly touching something very pricky, and immediately I withdraw my hand. So when I was touching something pricky, the spinal cord immediately received the message, did not send it to the brain, believing that if I keep on touching this for a long time, my skin may start bleeding. For any type of a situation, if you think, whenever we come across anything or a very strong stimulus, the response that we show is sudden, and at that time, it is not the brain which is involved. The thinking process of the brain is not there, because most of the time it is protective in nature. You touch something hot, withdraw your hand, somebody is pricking you, and you look back and defend yourself. You're walking on the road and suddenly you get to hear a loud sound and you look back at the sound. That is what we try to defend ourselves. It's not to walk away or run away. And then you're walking on the road and you suddenly see something, a big stone there, and you try moving out, or you see a big pothole and you jump back. Any of the situations you pick up, always you will see what is a stimulus, anything which is related with a strong reflex, response. Then, if I understand, then what is the difference between playing a musical instrument and coughing? How you are coughing, how you are sneezing? Did it bring about a lot of change right from the time you were born, or maybe when you were an infant? When you were an infant, at that time, of course, the muscles and everything has developed, that is different. But the way we cough, sneeze, blink, salivate, this is more or less the same right from an infant stages that we have been doing. Yes, a little bit of modulation we do, but whenever there's an instant irritant, you are sneezing almost at this, like the same way you are doing it almost when you are 1 or 2 years. But how you are eating food with a spoon today and 3-year-old, a big difference. How you are tying your shoelaces today and 3-year-old, 4-year-old, of course different. Then say suppose I talk about a person when you have started first riding the bicycle, if at all you have done, or the first time, first month when you have just started how to play the tennis or the cricket or etc. So at that time and today, after playing it for now 5-6 years, definitely it has become quite spontaneous, no? So all these things, if you analyze, you will see that there are certain activities, sneezing, coughing, salivation, etc., is so spontaneous, and we have not learned much. We don't have anything in memory that I'll do this way, I'll do that way. This type of reflexes, what will be termed as natural, inborn reflexes, and playing a musical instrument or etc., and then swimming or any type of a sport game, etc., knitting or etc. Remember all these instances, that these are all acquired. There is something learning, some learning involved. Then why are the reflexes? Are we understanding that the brain is a little bit involved? Yes, in this the brain is a little bit involved. But since it is not, why is it not so jerky and spontaneous? Because there is no accident involved in it in most of the cases, no? And acquired reflexes, what else to understand? Acquired reflexes, we do it and do it and do it, and it becomes involuntary. Today you are eating and flipping the pages of the book, or the keys of your laptop or something. 2-3 things at the same time, and it has become so involuntary. So what we have to understand, the concept of different types of reflexes. Take that definition. A conditioned reflex, what you should know. A conditioned reflex is also involuntary, but it always involves some experience. It always involves certain experience, and just go through some of these examples. Some of these examples sometimes come in the question paper. Some 3 instances will be given, and you'll have to tick or write which one is a natural reflex, which one is this one. Now, Pavlov's experiment was what? This generally doesn't come in the exam, Pavlov's experiment, but just to know, because application may come. So, what is Pavlov's experiment? The Pavlov's experiment was the conditioning. No, I'll ask you. You tell me an application of Pavlov's terms we give in the paper. So, if I'm talking about Pavlov's experiment, how was it? The dog was served food. The dog gets acquainted with the food. The dog now gets acquainted with the taste, the smell, everything. After that, the food, and then the bell. The bell rings, the food. The bell rings, the food. The bell rings, the food. So now, when it is done for a number of times, the dog gets programmed. Bell matlab food. What is the third step? The third step is only the bell, no food. Only the bell, no food. Only the bell, no food. So when only the bell, then also it is understood that the dog is still salivating. Only the bell, no food. The dog is still salivating. Does this happen to us? Does a similar situation happen to us?
Only when we
Smell the food. The smell the food. So whenever we are smelling the food, the moment we smell certain type of a food which we are very much fond of or our favorites, what happens? The moment we smell the food, salivation automatically happens. You know? Maybe we don't have the food, we don't get the food to eat at that time, or we don't have the food in front of us. But a number of times we thought of the food also. But a number of times you may be thinking of having your favorite food, and that also brings in a little bit of salivation. So that is what is programming, conditioning. Quite a number of times this is what is asked. What else? Reflex arc, reflex action, a difference quite often asked. What is the difference? Reflex arc, reflex action, and what are the components? Components very simple. That's a arrange, put it in correct order. That's a common question there in the paper. So what are the components? Components are number 1 receptor, number 2 sensory neuron, then number 3 spinal cord, number 4 motor neuron, number 5 effector. Okay. Now, what is this phenomenon? Phenomenon क्या है? Process क्या है? Phenomenon reflex action. How do you define reflex action? How do you define the reflex action? Reflex action is a. How do you define reflex action?
response to
It is a
stimulus.
spontaneous response. It is spontaneous, rapid, involuntary, immediate response controlled by the spinal cord. So when you write down the definition of the reflex action, at least 2-3 of these words definitely has to be there. It is rapid, it is prompt, it is spontaneous, involuntary activity controlled by the spinal cord. Clear? Then if this is reflex action, then what is reflex arc? It is the shortest pathway. Why shortest pathway? Because the brain is not involved. The brain is not involved. If the brain would have been involved, then you touch the hot pan, and by the time you remove your hand, definitely a couple of seconds goes in it. But you touch and immediately, before 5 seconds, we remove. It's not so. So now, whenever we are talking about, if the brain is involved, then definitely a couple of seconds, more than that, 15-20 seconds, definitely. So in that process, I suddenly happen to touch some pricky substance, I suddenly happen to touch fire, and then immediately withdraw. If I don't withdraw immediately, if 15 seconds goes in it, then definitely I'm burning a part of the fingertips. So this is what we come across. Why reflexes are always with us jerk. And what is the difference between reflex action, reflex arc? Reflex arc is the shortest pathway. Why is it considered as the shortest pathway? Because the thinking process of the brain is not involved. So that definitely you have to write there. So definition of the reflex arc, this concept you have to remember. And that is it in this part of the chapter. This much
complex reflection.
complex reflex are the basic concept only where, just stick that. When we are talking about the basic components again, Now, when we are talking about, take that concept of complex reflex action. Now, complex reflex action, we majorly talk about examples, like I have been already talking about these examples already. Say suppose you are walking on the road, you are walking on the footpath. Now that you are walking on the footpath, what's happening? Now that you walk on the footpath and you suddenly see a pothole, I just told also this example, you suddenly see a pothole, what do?
Jump over.
Either jump over or take a back. Immediate, the action is so immediate. Maybe you're talking on the phone, maybe you're talking with somebody and you did not notice that pothole from a long distance. You did not see. And then you're walking, and suddenly you get to see that. Immediately now. Is this the same as touching the hot pan? No, it is a bit different. Touching the hot pan, what? You touch the hot pan and immediately withdraw. Here, in this case, when you are just immediately withdrawing, the spinal cord is definitely involved, the brain is not that involved, and the skeletal muscles are not that programmed. That's the reason quite a number of times the lid falls and etc. It ends up into a mistake also, error also. It ends up into an error also. But then, when we are talking about complex reflexes, in case of complex reflexes, what happens? This is little bit more of a vigorous response. The response is even more vigorous quite a number of times. Just see that this is what you have to remember. This is because virtually all the skeletal muscles are involved in this reflex. Is it, now that you touch the hot pan and remove, can you name 2 skeletal muscles involved? The hand muscles and maybe the muscles of your face. You scream or something. No? You are withdrawing and we never withdraw silently. Do we do that? No. Withdraw, but with some, with a scream, with a shout or something. But now that I go, and suddenly I see a pothole. Suddenly I see the broken, the platforms on the footpath. What do? How many muscles? Is it only the face muscles? The legs and the arms. The legs and the arms and the muscles of the face and the muscles of the neck. So it is more than 2-3 muscles involved in the contraction. So many, it's a number of muscles, skeletal muscles for all of them. All these are skeletal muscles, a group of skeletal muscles. If it is involved in showing the response, it is a complex reflex. Couple of skeletal muscles involved in showing the reflex, it's a simple reflex, always. Thinking process of the brain generally, in case of complex reflexes, not involved. Again, there also, we are not talking about involvement of the brain there. Now, will you be able to solve number B sub number 1 very fast? B sub number 1. Solve B sub number 1. Solve B sub number B sub number 3. Just let me let just give you some very fast. You solve. Let us try to complete something more also. The ones which are easy, I don't give you. You should be able to do on your own. So check. Sub number 1, 138, 3, 139. C sub number 2, C sub number 3. C sub number 2, C sub number 3. Then go to 5. Then go to 5, and then B sub number 2. We'll have to find out whether you know the answers or not. Check. Fast forward. Check. You have a doubt? We'll discuss.
Junction between 2 nerve cells.
What is it?
The
Junction between 2 nerve cells. When I talk about that is the synapse. Junction between the 2 nerve cells. If this is one nerve, and then this is the axon part, and then this is the cyton of the other. What is this known as? This part will be known as what? This part will be known as the synapse. Which type of chemical substances are there in the synapse? Neurotransmitters. One example of neurotransmitter? Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine. Come on, fatafat karo.
Central space.
Maths, how much portion left?
Maths in here 2 chapters.
Acha. Lengthy chapters or small?
One is lengthy, one is also lengthy. Graph paper. Graph.
Acha. And baki? Physics?
Physics हो गया
Physics.
Electricity हो गया.
हाँ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी हो गया
Chemistry पूरा
हाँ केमिस्ट्री
Chemistry,
one is
minor
left
is-
H2SO4
We are waiting for you guys.
अच्छा. सर ने पहले आप.
Yeah, chemistry?
only
Yes.
one chapter is left and practical chemistry so 2
One chapter is left.
no
Acha.
they are teaching
Central space of the.
Maths. Because next class I want to finish with I. Is it okay if we can keep a 2-hour lecture next week?
yes ma'am
Because once we are done with sense organs and
manage
reproductive system, because these 2 chapters have waited more, no?
yes
To finish up. At least by this month, definitely we have to finish up these 2 chapters. Then endocrine and evolution can go slow, not a problem. आराम से हो जाएगा, 2 lecture में खत्म हो जाएगा. Your pre-boards का क्या date? Whatever is the date?
second December
And here,
November second week
date still not known. So I think now, next Friday, let's say next Friday, I think we'll have to keep 2 hours lecture, huh? Okay?
yes
We'll finish with I. Here not much, but I'll take time. And it's again 1 hour, no, that's so boring. It takes a lot of time. 2 hours meaning at one shot I will get over.
Yeah, because once we come back 1 hour, we have to discuss
Ah.
and then understand.
Again. So I 2 hours में फटाफट खत्म हो जाएगा ना. Here not much. Here फटाफट हो. Here in 1 hour they can finish. Here 1 hour में हो गया, and then endocrine is also simple. Endocrine is simple. So before endocrine, if it is okay, reproductive we can do.
Yes.
So reproductive will take first, and then we are comfortable.
So, and in the last class, you keep the markings of human evolution.
हाँ, evolution नहीं है. चलो fast. Finish with this. Next class, I'm not going to discuss on this anymore.
ये odd one out of the first half.
Gray matter. Gray matter, rest are layers of managers.
What is bonds?
Pons varole, this Pons varole is a part of the hindbrain. In what relation you have to answer?
Odd one out and write the category of the remaining cells. So hypothalamus, cerebellum, pons, medulla oblongata.
Hypothalamus.
Category to
Hypothalamus, it's a part of the forebrain. The rest are parts of the hindbrain. The rest are parts of the hindbrain.
Sneezing, drinking, knitting without knitting or
knitting
Acquired cells.
अच्छा वो नहीं बोला कोई इमोशन है
Where?
true I suppose
तो क्या है इसका sneezing, drinking, blushing, knitting without knitting
knitting without
लिखने है भाई.
knitting without looking बाकी सारे emotions are that is sympathetic
Emotional.
emotion नहीं my bad involuntary
That's all are. No, it's not so important. That's all
knitting
are.
without looking is involuntary
yeah rest all are reflexes
Involved reflexes. Involved.
इतना नहीं हो सकता.
अच्छा हाँ समझा knitting without knitting is acquired
It's emotional affection नहीं हो सकती.
emotional
तो ठीक है ना? That's emotional.
इसका true and false का first answer
Emotion नहीं करता.
हाँ बोलो क्या है now?
The main component of white matter of the brain is pericardium. True or false?
White matter is what? Axon.
Axon.
Pericardium क्या है? अरे
Pericardium is cytosol.
साइटोन। पेरिकेरियन तो 8th स्टैंडर्ड से पढ़ रहे हो, पेरिकेरियन साइटोन, और अभी 8th में 10th में हाँ
Like not place is closely inside the false. It forms a web-like.
What are you doing? Why you are asking her?
नहीं पता चैप्टर ICSE reflexes समझ में
A double chain.
नहीं पता चैप्टर एब्सेंट क्यों थे इतने? एग्जाम तो कब का खत्म हो गया था? Last year?
ये ट्यूसडे को
Yes. No. Yes.
हाँ बोलो. What is it?
A double chain of ganglia on each side
No,
of
that's
the
only
nerve
one
cord belongs to the spinal cord.
Double chain of ganglia on either side.
No. Only
In question it is given that.
that's a false.
हाँ. On either side. False.
Yes. True.
Next. Now you had missed this part of the chapter. Nervous system not very difficult. You may try going through once. We have studied this in the 8th standard. एक बार देखो, फिर भी जो confusing लगे next class पूछो. And this sense organ until the chapter reproductive sense organ, उसके बाद reproductive system we will do. See that you don't remain absent any of the class. And why this girl is absent today?
No idea.
Why you met in school, no? चलो फटाफट करो. You met in school, no?
Yes. But yes, she was present today. She said she. My idea is
A contraction of eye pupil, is it a simple reflex or conditioned reflex?
Simple. We cannot regulate. You cannot make it better. How will you identify that it is a conditioned reflex, something that you can make better day by day? Practice करके better कर सकते हो, उसको conditioned reflex है. Contraction and these things automatically happen. No, you cannot do anything.
Four are conditioning.
What is it?
Lifting up a book.
Lifting up a book. Condition.
Last one है और बचा ही वही.
Sudden application of brakes of the cycle on sighting.
What will it be? You have understood it. You think. What will it be? Application of brakes. What will it be?
Complex. Reflex.
Huh? Application of brakes. Application of brakes. एक new learner को बिठाओ. Application of brakes वो जैसे करेगा. And after 5 years also the person is driving the car. Application of brakes suddenly होगा ना? Application of brakes will be sudden, no? So if it is sudden, then what will happen? Condition.
Knitting without machine. Knitting without
Condition.
Right.
Reflex arc. Condition.
It's a dendron.
Dendron is this one.
Part of dendrite.
Say this is the this is dendron.
Oh.
This is dendron.
Sorry.
Huh?
Yes. अरे वो याद था ऐसे.
The first few branches, dendron. Then those second layer of branches are actually dendrites.
It's depolarization, resting.
No, polarization, depolarization, repolarization.
There's no. Okay, so resting,
Polarization, polarization, depolarization, repolarization. ये एक बार go through करो. This is the entire method.
तीन ऑप्शन
तीन ही
है,
option है.
repolarization, depolarization,
Bracket में
और
polarize दिया.
तो resting का
resting के
हाँ
बाद
हाँ. Polarization and resting is the same thing.
उसके बाद
That is one.
उसके बाद depolarization, उसके बाद green
ऐसा. So what है?
You read this topic.
First one. दो क्यों है?
Oh my God.
Cerebrum.
न्यूरॉन स्ट्रक्चर को अगर रीअरेंज करना है तो करेक्ट तो हम नीचे से चालू करेंगे और ऊपर से चालू
No, dendrites. Condition is given.
Dendrites.
न्यूरॉन स्ट्रक्चर
Neuron structure. Then always dendrites,
This is
dendron,
dendrites, this is dendron.
cyton,
Then you come
axon, axon terminus. How will you understand how? It is not impulse से stimulus कभी नहीं जाता. It is always stimulus से impulse. Always that concept to remember. कैसे arrange करना है? Stimulus से impulse.
डी क्या है डायेंसेफेलॉन
Diencephalon is second.
First one.
First is
cerebrum.
Hmm?
ना?
For-
Cerebrum,
Hmm.
diencephalon,
Hmm.
midbrain,
Hmm.
cerebellum, pons,
Hmm.
and
Medulla.
medulla.
Hmm.
गलत. Cerebrum.
This you have to understand.
ये बनो. Cerebrum.
Diencephalon is
Structure. या तो you both do one thing. Don't solve that now. It makes no sense, no? ऐसे fill करके कोई फायदा नहीं हो रहा है. Leave that. Read the part of now इस part of the chapter में सबसे important जो दो topics है that is nerve impulse transmission, electrical and chemical, and structure and function of the brain. Reflex तो अभी समझ में आ गया. So ये दो topic पहले एक बार पढ़ो. Then you solve the question. ऐसे एक दूसरे से पूछ के filling up is no meaning. Okay. Read the part of the chapter. उसके बाद you try solving. Then जो doubt रहेगा next class you do come and ask. So that way you complete this part of the chapter. Okay. This is not yours. Mine. Thank you.
So next,
So we have सदन पूरा क्या बात है डेटा
अरे तुझे reflex से होता है ना?
पूरे इसमें दो एक कट और सिंपल और वो कंडीशन बस पूरे लेक्चर में तो दो समझ आ
अरे क्योंकि वो इतना खास करा रही थी
अरे इसको कुछ नहीं आ रहा
नींद आ रही है
ऊपर से पता नहीं किसी को तो हड्डी लग रहा था वो
हड्डी ये रहा वो
हड्डी का मेरा भाई मैं बोल रहा हूँ हड्डी का
हाँ मैसेज आता है सो
पता है मेरे को कॉल पे कॉल किया जा रहा है
मैसेज आ रहे हैं भेजे लो
फिर से उठाता फिर से मैसेज आते
देख भाई साहब मैसेज
लोग के
24
रिच स्पीड
भाई लोग के रिजल्ट्स तो जल्दी आ जाते हैं
हाँ ना अच्छा अरे अपना क्रेडिट था अपना क्रेडिट था उसके
बाय पीपल यार उन लोग के ना 9 वाला क्लास से 8 ही थोड़ा सा